Well, the latest three-game week comes to a close in a championship this weekend. It is match day 14, and we are going to look ahead to all 12 fixtures and give you our score predictions with the reason why. As always, I'll encourage you to get your scores in the comments, and if you beat or match my score, you will get a shout out in the next recap. And without further ado, before we move on to week 14, let's go and have a look back at what happened in midweek, because it was a tale of two halves for me. A very good Tuesday, followed by a very frustrating Wednesday. And late on, it took away what had the potential to be a pretty good point scoring week for me. In the end, it was 5 points on Tuesday, followed by just one on Wednesday evening. Plymouth Argyle with Sheffield Wednesday was my 1 point. I also picked up 5 on Tuesday, including a perfect score for Middlesbrough's win at Norwich. A few bits of frustration late on. Bristol City missing a couple of glorious chances against Ipswich, and Preston North End letting in a 96-minute equaliser did not help my cause either. So overall, 6 points for me, which was still better than about half of the chat because it was a midweek full of a few surprises. But there were 8 of you who managed to beat my score, and as a result, you'll all get a shout out. We'll start in reverse order with Steve and BPK on 7. You both got 1 perfect score for Plymouth and Ipswich respectively. Pete and Mitchell with 8 apiece, again for Plymouth and Ipswich respectively. Luke got 9 with 2 perfect scores for West Brom and for Middlesbrough. The same perfect scores for Calvin, but more correct outcomes got you into double figures with 11. 12 for W and G, who got the Leicester and Hull games right. You were the only person to call both of those games perfectly. And then Chris won the day on 13 with 3 perfect scores. Middlesbrough, West Brom, and a draw between Preston and Saints. You just pipped me with the last minute of that one. But with that frustrating midweek out the way, let's move on to the weekend. And on Saturday, I can actually enjoy the championship as Luton aren't in action until Sunday this week. So match day 14 begins with 2 early kickoffs on the Saturday lunchtime. The first of them is Leeds United versus Huddersfield Town. 2 sides that had a very frustrating midweek. Leeds losing at Stoke in spite of having a penalty and a couple of other very good opportunities. When you blaze a penalty over the bar, then allow Stoke a late winner with an own goal as well. Oh, it's a very frustrating day for them. For Huddersfield, it was more a disastrous day. A 4-0 defeat at home to Cardiff. They actually responded pretty well to conceding the first and after a while the second as well, but defensively you can't keep giving up goals like that, and for Darren Moore, after a first win, it will be a crushing return to reality. Not a disaster going forward for Huddersfield as they did create 4 clear-cut chances and several opportunities, but they didn't take them, and at the back they were a mess, so definitely a few causes for concern. And for this one, with Leeds' recent form, yes, they lost that game narrowly, but they should have got something out of it with the pen, and before that, they'd won 3 in a row, so I'm going to go for them to win this one. I do think it will be a home win at Ellen Road. I just feel Huddersfield are too poor defensively, and that Leeds will open them up. So I'm going to go comfortable to start with. I feel I've gone a little safe with my score predictions in recent weeks, which has stopped me getting enough perfect scores. So as a result, I'm going back to bold, and we'll start with a 3-1 Leeds United win. Let's move on to the second early kickoff and the one that's on TV. Wayne Rooney's Birmingham travel to Southampton, and it has been a disastrous start for Wayne Rooney's Birmingham. After defeat away at his old teammate Michael Carrick's Middlesbrough, it was a disaster at home to his old assistant manager, Liam Rossini. A 2-0 defeat against Hull, booed off a bit at half-time, booed off strongly at full-time. It was a really poor Birmingham display. Definitely not seeing signs of the no-fear football yet, and perhaps not really seeing enough of Birmingham going forward. Hull deservedly won the game, and they didn't really get carved open at all, so Birmingham got a lot of work to do. Their away form hasn't been great anyway, and they go to a Southampton side that just made it 5 unbeaten in a championship. A 96th minute own goal helped them equalise after a performance where they did the same thing again. We talked about it a few times, conceding 2 goals in 3 or 4 minutes. From 1-0 up at half-time, they threw the game away and just about got it back at the end. Russell Martin will be thrilled because they had 70% of the ball, but poor defensively and really aren't helping themselves here. Of course, they're going to be in the mix for the playoffs and will probably make it, but this is the reason I didn't put them in the top 2 at the start of the year. They're just not consistent enough defensively. And again, they've gone back to being a little bit too predictable with the ball there in that game. Despite that though, I still have to back a Southampton win this time. Birmingham look completely uninspired and deflated Now they've changed manager. So I'm going to go for Southampton to win. I'm going to go for a home clean sheet because Birmingham struggle for goals on the road. I'm going to go by 2-0, but don't be shocked if there's a defensive error from Southampton. Let's move on to the 3 o'clocks and we start with Blackburn Rovers versus Swansea. Blackburn were excellent in turning around a 1-0 deficit at Millwall. A disastrous start, but after that, they were very good value for it in the end. Putting some very good defensive blocks and their bodies on the line as Millwall tried to create, and they were ruthless, they were fluent on the counter-attack, and arguably could have had 1 or 2 more. Really looked a good side, have improved a bit defensively, and to be fair, they were finishing their chances, which has always been the question of them this year. They were never short of creativity. For Swansea, it was a bit of a bizarre game. They've been on a great run, and obviously they lost to Leicester, but there were still encouraging signs. Home to Watford, though, very weird performance. Watford had a pretty comfortable day in the end. Frustrated Swansea made it a little bit difficult and took advantage in the end. It was more a return to what we'd seen earlier in the season from Swansea, rather than a recent good form. And that has made this game a bit harder to predict for me. I feel looking at the home and away form, you're not really getting much out of it either. Swansea mid-table for away form. Blackburn, again, not drawing many games. 3 wins, 3 defeats at home. So I have to go for a result either way. And based on the last couple of matches, I'm going to go safe with this one. Blackburn to nick it at home to Swansea. And I'm going to go by 2-1. As we move on to a big game that very rarely kicks off at 3 o'clock actually. It is Cardiff City versus Bristol City in a 7-city derby. And it is a massive game for both after differing midweeks. Cardiff bounced back from defeat at Blackburn with a thrilling 4-0 win at Huddersfield. Probably doesn't tell the full story of the game, but what it does show is that Cardiff were ruthless on the counter-attack. Their best attacking players are finding form. Robinson and Maytate both contributing a goal. And defensively, while they did give up a few very good chances, they survived and kept a clean sheet, so no complaints at all. For Bristol City, probably a bit frustrated to be beaten by Ipswich because although they conceded the early goal and Ipswich did create plenty, they had a couple of great chances, Bristol City, and will feel they should have got something from the game. I was close to my 1-1 championship favourite scoreline prediction and I really thought it was going to come in. A couple of chances missed and that's the unforgivable bit. Bristol City, they aren't often ruthless enough in front of goal and they don't have enough good defensive displays, which is why they and Stoke are always the 2 most unpredictable teams in the league. As a result of that, I am going to go for a low scoring game here. Cardiff are not going to be that ruthless every time and they're not going to be gifted that many openings. And Bristol City will be coming, I think, with the priority of not to lose. Ultimately, I think they might, but I'm going to go for a tight game. And I'm going to go for Cardiff to nick it by 1-0. Let's move on to Hull City versus Preston. These two sides again had slightly different midweeks because Hull, they ended their run of 4 games without a win with a cracking 2-0 victory at Birmingham. Of course, we've talked about the Birmingham side of it, but Hull had to be there to take advantage. They looked a threat on the counter. Good to see Liam Delap on the score sheet, who I am a fan of. For Preston, well, it was all going to plan until the 96th minute, wasn't it? But sat a little bit too deep at the end, trying to cling on to a 2-1 victory against the Saints. And unfortunately, the centre-forward pops up with an own goal. It's one of those things, but for Preston, it obviously wasn't the most exciting performance. They had to give up the ball a lot. They had to hit on a counter, almost play like an away team. And to be fair, for 95 minutes, they did it well and could well have come out with a 2-1 win. But what it does do with such a late goal as well, takes away a bit of the momentum. It's been a number of games without a victory now. Actually, not one since mid-September. And after that cracking start, yes, they're still in 4th place. But they could really do with picking up a victory. I'm not sure what to expect from this one because Hull are actually significantly worse at home. They draw most of their games. They've drawn 4 out of 6. And they've actually picked up nearly double the amount of points on the road. So I am going to go for Preston to nick this and end the winless run. You just feel it has to come eventually. I thought it would be midweek and they were very close. I wouldn't be shocked if this is a draw. It's got 1-1 written all over it, quite frankly. I'm going to go for Preston to nick it. I'm being bold this weekend. I'm going 2-1 to the visitors. Let's move on to a game between the top 2 from League 1 last season. It is Ipswich Town at home to Plymouth Argyle. Both sides got the win in midweek. Plymouth excellent at home to bottom of the table Sheffield Wednesday. A really good display, 2 crucial goals just before half time. And in the end, in what was a relatively even game, they got themselves comfortably over the line. Very important to get that second just before the break. For Ipswich, it is a relentless train. A 1-0 win at Bristol City, which, as we mentioned earlier on, Bristol City did have a couple of great chances and could have nicked something from the match. But Ipswich won't care. They are 9 points clear of third with a game in hand. They are absolutely flying on their return to the Championship. And they're following the same pattern, which is goals galore at home, as we saw with the 4-2 against Preston. And then very few goals and tight away from home, showing different facets of the game, different setups as well. I'm really impressed with what Kieran McKenna's done. Based on the fact it's at Portman Road though, and that Plymouth away from home have not been great defensively, albeit they have compiled back-to-back clean sheets in the last week, I'm going to go for a big win for the hosts here. I do feel it's going to be an open game, and I do feel Ipswich are going to come out on top. Their home form this season would suggest that. How many they're going to concede, you never know, but I'm going to go for Ipswich to win heavily, and I'm going to go by 4-1. Sorry, Plymouth fans. Into the second half we go, and before last weekend, you might have said this was a home banker as well, because it is Middlesbrough versus Stoke. Borough are now a steam train with 6 successive wins in all competitions. Stoke, though, come into this one off back-to-back home victories against Leeds and Sunderland, a pretty impressive effort, but it doesn't change the fact that they are the most inconsistent team in the league. They've only won one away game all season, which was that comeback at Bristol City, and Borough are absolutely flying. They got a 2-1 win at Norwich, and it was a late one as well. We'll keep the momentum, we'll keep the confidence, and to be fair, over the course of the game, they were absolutely dominant in that match as well. For Stoke, a 1-0 win against Leeds. They rode their luck a bit, didn't they? The penalty miss over the bar. Leeds had a couple of other good chances, and it's 6 important points this week. But away from home, I can't see them getting anything at Borough. They look like they're flying at the minute. Okay, a couple less goals in the last week, but really good performances. Stoke will be tired after 2 big efforts at home. I'm going for Borough to win comfortably, and I'm going to go with a clean sheet as well. 3-0 to Middlesbrough. Let's move to one that could potentially be a coupon buster, but it will be many people's banker for this weekend. It is QPR versus Leicester City. It is top v second bottom. QPR have lost 5 in a row in all competitions. Leicester have won 5 in a row in all competitions. I think we know how this works in a championship. There is every part of my body that wants to predict QPR to get a result here because we've seen this outcome so many times in championship football. But I'm trying to get points this weekend, and as a result, whether or not it comes off, I have to go for a Leicester win. They have been magnificent to let in 7 goals in 13 and pick up another clean sheet in midweek, which was crucial in a 1-0 win against Sunderland. A cracking effort from them. And for QPR, what can you say? They look poor at the back. They've got very little goal threat. Even on the occasions they have created chances, they've not really looked like taking them. Jimmy Dunn suspended. It was obviously 0-0 at the time. Gave away the penalty, gave away the goal. And I mean, West Brom just took advantage after that. No shots on target. 1 shot across the whole game. And if we're being fair, West Brom should have scored more because he had a couple of very good opportunities. It's a disappointing spell for QPR, and as much as I don't like saying it, I do worry for Ainsworth now. It looks like it's falling away a bit, and at home, they've been particularly rotten this year. Just 1 point picked up at what is normally a fortress in Loftus Road. Leicester obviously have the best away record in the league. It is perfect so far this season. I'm going to go for a comfortable, if not spectacular win. I'm going to go for Leicester to nick it by 2-0, and anything QPR get is a bonus. 2 more games on the Saturday, and the first of them is 2 out-of-form teams because it is Sunderland versus Norwich City. Sunderland have lost 3 in a row, albeit 2 of those were against Borough and Leicester. And Norwich are without a win in 4 now, albeit they've played Borough and Leeds this week. So, very poor defensively from Norwich, very poor in front of goal from Sunderland, which is unexpected after September. And it really does become a question of which is going to prevail. Can Sunderland play almost like a counter-attacking team, as they've done so effectively on the road at times in the last year or so? They did have chances against Leicester, and they did create a bit, but Leicester were just too good and efficient, which there's no shame in that. That will happen to most sides. For Norwich against Borough, yes, a consolation in the 99th minute, but Borough were the better team by a long way. And I just worry about these types of games because they become impossible to predict. I feel there's going to be desperation. I feel both sides are going to see it as a chance to regain momentum, and hopefully we'll get quite an attacking game out of that. But those predictions from me are not often great, so don't get too excited about it. I'm going to go for Sunderland to nick it. I'm going to go for a high-scoring game. I'm going to go for the thriller of the weekend. 3-2 at the Stadium of Light. The final game on Saturday is Watford versus Millwall. Still managerless Millwall at the time of recording on Thursday afternoon. Watford have produced back-to-back 1-0 wins, and perhaps the one at Swansea a bit more impressive than the home one against Sheffield Wednesday. A really important result against a side that had been playing pretty well, and a first away win of the season for Watford as well. And for Millwall, went ahead early against Blackburn. It looked promising, but then fell away again. And now they're starting to drift down the division and actually start the day behind Watford on goal difference. So I do find this one quite tricky to predict. Watford, despite their recent wins, do not carry a regular goal threat. Valérien Ismaël very much trying to resolve the defensive issues in the team. And for Millwall, they've been uncharacteristically poor defensively this season, but they have scored in all of their last 4. So based on that, I'm going to be ambitious, and rather than go for a 0-0, which is what I was initially thinking, I'm going to chuck in the Championship's favourite scoreline, because surely we can't go a whole weekend without one. 1-1 at Vicarage Road. I think both sides would probably be quite happy with that, particularly Watford after 2 wins this week. Let's move on to Sunday and a game that, well, in recent years we've seen some absolute crackers in this fixture. It's the Yorkshire derby between Sheffield Wednesday and Rotherham. You all remember that game back in League One. For Sheffield Wednesday, it's getting desperate now, isn't it? They did create a few more openings against Plymouth than they have at times this season, but the defensive frailties are there. They just look so lacking in confidence, really lacking in fitness compared to some of the league, and I am very worried about them for the rest of this year. Not the manager bounce that Danny Roll was hoping for, and as we said, he's probably going to need his own players to put his imprint on that team. For Rotherham, a very good win against Coventry, a good late second goal to take away any nerves, and to be fair, Coventry had a great chance just after the Rotherham goal, but they hung on to pick up their second win of the season, and their home form, as we mentioned before, is going to be crucial because they have been diabolical on the road this season. Their only point has come away at Southampton, which was very much against the run of play. But this game is going to be so important because Rotherham will see this as possibly the only winnable away game at the minute, and Sheffield Wednesday will be thinking, if we can't get our first win of the season at home to Rotherham, who are so poor on the road, where on earth are we going to get one? Sheffield Wednesday have not scored in 6 matches. There is the biggest problem here. Rotherham away from home cannot stop conceding. Which one's going to prevail? Well, I'm going for Sheffield Wednesday to score. And not just score, to score twice. Rotherham away, I just cannot back. Whether or not they're playing Sheffield Wednesday or anyone else. Surely at Hillsborough, a first home game for Danny Roll, we're going to see a reaction. We're going to see a buoyant crowd. And if it doesn't come this weekend, in this derby, in this fixture, I'm going to say it this early, I think they're as good as down. I'm going to go for Sheffield Wednesday to nick it 2-1, but purely because they've got no alternative but to win. And the final game is on Monday Night Football, and my word, is it a big one. It is Coventry City versus West Bromwich Albion. One side has had a poor start, one side has just crept into the playoffs, but there's only 5 points between them. This is the Championship. Coventry made it back-to-back defeats with a very disappointing performance at Rotherham. No goal in either of the last 2 games, and Ellis Sims really struggling at the minute to find form and confidence. So maybe a few changes in attacking areas for Coventry just for now. For West Brom, yes, it was a bit of a home banker against QPR, and yes, it took until QPR got a red card and gave away a penalty. But they won the game. They look efficient, and the best thing I can say is they look like a Corberan side. They've kept 5 clean sheets in their last 6. Okay, they've had a fairly friendly run of fixtures, and they're coming up against a Coventry side struggling for confidence, but quite often strong at home. And this is where I'm struggling because, yes, Coventry have lost their last 2, but the 3 home games before they picked up 5 points, didn't lose any of them. 1-0, 1-1, 1-1. It's going to be a low-scoring game, isn't it? I can't see any alternative other than this being 1-0 either way. And I'm going to go for Coventry to nick it, just because at the end, the Championship always throws these up. I'm going for Coventry to win 1-0, but do not be shocked at all if it goes the other way round. With that out of the way though, let's have a quick recap of what we predicted for matchday 14. A few very big scoring games and then lots of little ones as well. We've got a 4-1 win for Ipswich at home to Plymouth Argyle, their fellow promoted side from last year. Borough to win by 3 at home to Stoke, and a couple of 1-0 home wins for Cardiff in a big game, and Coventry as well. Will Sheffield Wednesday pick up the first win of the season I predicted? Well, the South Yorkshire derby better get them motivated. Those are just my predictions for this weekend and matchday 14 though. Do you agree or disagree? Let me know in the comments below. As always, as I mentioned earlier, if you beat or match my score, you'll get a shout out in a recap for next weekend's fixtures. But for now, if you did enjoy this episode, please do put a thumbs up on the video. Yesterday, we had our latest Premier League predictions for this weekend, as well as the preview of Villa v Luton. That's up in the eye above, as are my Football Manager channels for both YouTube and Twitch. Thank you for your incredible support with them at the release of FM24. You can come and join us on Twitch for plenty of football chat too. If you want to make sure you don't miss anything here, with manager specials round the corner as well, then subscribe and turn that notification bell on. But we'll be back here next week with more Premier League and Championship predictions, and in the meantime, probably a Millwall manager special. I'll see you there.